Hello, everybody. Welcome to Liberty and EDC. I'm your host, Daniel Sellers Norman, and we're here with Paul Penn, who's running for EID, Board Supervisor, District 1.
Board of Directors, Division
Directors,
1.
Division 1. There
Right.
we go.
It gets a little arcane, as you go down the ballot.
Great. So thank you for coming on, Paul. We really appreciate it.
Good to be here.
So I wanted to ask you a fun question to start. So tell me, what's one of your favorite places to go in El Dorado County, like eatery or, like place to visit, like beautiful view, something like that?
Well, my favorite place to eat, don't let it get around, is LA, the restaurant in Diamond Springs. And I am a skier, so I do love Sierra Tahoe.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Those are two of my favorite places, too. Yeah.
Well, let's go.
LA's amazing. So tell us a little bit about yourself, share some of your background with us, and why did you decide to run for office?
Well, I've been in the Sierra since 1975. Moved up to Donner Summit to be a professional ski patroller.
Yeah.
Went up for a season, stayed a decade. But by the time I left, I was a county planning commissioner and the vice president of the public utility district, which is sewer and water and fire and ambulance.
For where was that at?
Is on Donner Summit in Soda Springs.
Okay.
As we used to say, above it all. And so that was kind of my introduction to water. I went on to graduate school, got a master's degree in environmental management, specializing in hazardous materials emergencies. Went down, paid my dues in San Benito County, running emergency management, emergency medical services, hazardous materials, and hazardous waste. Came over to the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, where I ran the largest hazardous materials emergency planning and community right to know program in the country.
Wow.
Then
How did you end up doing that?
well, kind of, there's, as an emergency manager and somebody who was specializing in hazardous materials, it was something that kind of evolved. I came in, I ended up, before that, I wrote the state of California's Hazardous Materials Incident Contingency Plan, which is actually still in effect today, and I wrote it in 1990.
Wow.
So
Must have been a pretty good plan if they're still using it.
Either it was a really good plan or they just haven't bothered updating it. So then I went on and I was the oil spill response program manager at the California Conservation Corps and managed their, and I was their safety officer for a while.
Wow.
And
did you wash any baby ducks?
No, but I trained people to wash
On
baby
how to
ducks.
wash a baby duck?
So that's why I use Dawn at home.
Oh, yeah.
Do you use Dawn at home?
We do.
So from there, I went on to worked at a small healthcare system you probably never heard of called Kaiser Permanente.
Oh, okay.
And I managed the environmental health and safety in their Kaiser Morse facility, which was truly a challenge. All these were very rewarding and challenging, but because of my background in water, these issues kept on popping up. It's an interest I've had for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I worked for a nonprofit, but then I hung my own shingle as a consultant, still a consultant, for quite a while. And I had a home office. So what I would do is on Mondays, when there were EID meetings, I'd start going down to EID meetings. I know because I know how to have a good time. Going to the El Dorado Irrigation District to their Board of Directors meetings, just because I found it interesting. And the incumbent, George Osborne, who's retiring after almost 24 years.
Yeah, he's been doing it a long time.
When I was in the Conservation Corps, we unfortunately worked together on a fatality investigation of a young firefighter.
Oh, no.
So I got to know him then, and I showed up and I sat in, and I said, George, I think you're doing a good job. I'm not going to run against you. And if there's a time when you don't run again, I'd like to consider running. And after his 23 years, I'm a patient guy. He decided to retire, and I stepped up.
Right on. So, in your own words, like, what does an EID board member do?
Well, they are the decision makers. They are the ones who make the policy. They only hire two people. They hire the general manager and the general counsel. but they are the ones who set the final policy. They're the ones who make the determination on the strategic planning. They're the ones who make the decision on the big issue is the capital improvement projects, because we have lots of aging infrastructure and we have a lot of expensive projects we need to do in order to keep clean, good water coming out of the tap, making sure your wastewater goes away and is taken care of appropriately. And that is the challenges that we have. We do, EID does fresh water, we do wastewater, they do recycled water in El Dorado Hills and parts of Cameron Park, and then they also do recreation. Slide Park up in Jenkinson Lake, and then small campgrounds up at Silver and Caples Lake.
Okay. Now, for those responsibilities that the board director does, what about those responsibilities make you want to be a board director?
Well, I've been on many boards in my life. Mostly I've been asked by other people to be on boards. And because of my background in water and because, again, I have that public utility district experience, and for the past number of years, I've been very active in our local fire safe council. So I'm the vice chair of the Diamond Springs Fire Safe Council, and I'm on the executive board of the County Fire Safe Council, right next door to you guys right here.
Yeah.
And as I say, fire is our greatest hazard, but water is our most precious commodity. And in California and the arid West, water determines everything. No water, no communities. And that was one of the things that was really brought out to me in my emergency management days, because I've worked on fires, floods, earthquakes, hazardous materials incidents, and I recognize that if the water systems are compromised, you don't have communities. And I've been working closely with my communities in various different levels over my lifetime, and I figure this is the best place I can contribute to that community.
Right on. Now, tell us where's District 1 at, so people know if they're in District 1 or not, and then also what are some of the specific challenges that you see facing that area?
Well, Division 1 runs from Town of El Dorado, Diamond Springs, out Pleasant Valley, Camino, Pollock Pines, up to Strawberry, and Outingdale. So it's a very large district, not very densely populated, covers most of the agricultural area in the county. And the big issue that keeps coming up over and over again is aging infrastructure. So the aging infrastructure has lots of ramifications. We have a lot of repairs that need to be done. Probably in the division, the entire district, there are probably 50 leaks going on right now. So it takes a while to get to those. Most are small, some are large. We had a large one last week down in El Dorado Hills. These just understanding that emergency repairs are orders of magnitude more expensive than regularly scheduled repairs. We have 3 treatment plants in the main part of the district, excluding Strawberry and Outingdale. They're all over 60 years old. They are beyond their life cycle. 2 of those water treatment plants are in my division. One outside of Pollock called Reservoir 1, and then the one just outside of Slide Park, Jenkinson Lake, is called Reservoir A. Between the 2 of those, it'll probably cost between $60 and $90 million. The El Dorado Hills treatment plant will probably cost $100 million. Up at Silver Lake, we are required by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to redo the dam. That'll cost us around $45 million.
Oh, no.
So those are some pretty large chunks of change, right? And
how soon do those things need to happen?
Well, they're being held together by some very dedicated staff, and they need to be done within the next, let's say, 5 years. It's called a capital improvement plan that goes out around 5 years. And we all look at and what comes next. Unfortunately, they're deferring some other things that are vitally needed and hitting the things that really have to be done. But one of the issues is we have an old system, we have aging infrastructure, part of it that in the 70s and 80s wasn't maintained as well as it should. It's beyond its life cycle. Plus, we are not very densely populated. Means that we have few people, large distances, and that adds up to an expensive program, unfortunately.
So when you say the aging infrastructure, like what examples can you give so people have a picture in their mind of like what are they looking at?
So let me give you a good example. Much of our water is carried down from Caples Lake and Silver Lake up on 88 in canals, flumes, drains, and siphons. I have seen the flumes, which are basically canals above ground, right, sitting on stacks of rock without mortar that were built by the Chinese laborers just after the gold rush.
So like 1800s or
1800s.
Okay.
Okay. And because they're up there in the mountains, in order to repair those or replace those, you either have to cut a road, fly things in by helicopter. You can imagine how expensive that is. Now, the district has been very good at getting grants, but you can't rely on grants. And we have to be able to show the people who are funding us, the bonds and, the debt organizations, that we can actually pay back what we borrow.
Okay.
It's not a very exciting, and those rates hurt us all. But we can't run to failure.
So with these big projects that have to happen like in the next 5 years, how are we going to pay for those? Like, are we looking at like possible rate increases? What do you think?
Well, there are scheduled rate increases going on for each year for the next 5 years. And then they just approved, again, I'm not on the board yet, they just approved going out for $75 million in debt financing, hopefully getting the best rates so that we're not putting all the burden on the ratepayers all at once, so we can stretch that out over time. They're looking at grants and looking at what is referred to as non-rate revenues, things that we don't rely on you and I paying our water bills.
Yeah. Now, with the timing of these, because you said they're overdue, do you think like the current board's kind of been kicking the can down the road, or is it, has there been circumstances where it hasn't been able to do these projects?
I would say that back in probably the 70s and 80s, rather than raising the rates a little bit, they deferred maintenance. In the past 20 years or so, they've really tried to right the ship, to really address these issues. And I think they've done a relatively good job considering what they're faced with. And they have tried to tackle it. They brought in a general manager who really did say, hey, we need to deal with these things. Now, he is retiring in the next year or so. So one of the big challenges and responsibilities of the board is to choose a new general manager. And, that is going to be one of the first things I believe that the new board within a year or so will have to tackle.
Okay. So those problems are from we're paying for like 50-year-old mistakes.
I wouldn't say 50-year-old mistakes. It's easy to, as you say, kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
And a number of years back, they realized that they can't do that anymore. If your equipment breaks down, well, you may be out of business, right?
Yeah.
But as a public utility, which is what we are, we cannot run to failure.
Yeah.
Right? We have to understand, as I said earlier, that no water, no community.
Yeah.
And it's been said that the further down you go in the ballot, the more you directly impact people's lives. Is there anything more direct than turning on your tap and good, high-quality water coming out of it? You don't want bad water coming out, and you especially don't want no water coming out.
Yeah. Got to have my shower in the morning.
Got to have your shower.
Yep. Is there any other key issues that you're passionate about?
Well, there are many, key issues. One is ensuring that we are the employer of choice. There are many other, districts that have these things. Want to make sure that we, attract and retain our employees by being the employer of choice.
Yeah, get the good talent.
We want to keep our costs under wrap. We want to ensure that we communicate well with our ratepayers, that we're transparent in everything we do, and that we can withstand scrutiny. And just want to make sure that if my kids decide they want to move back to El Dorado County, they got a good place to come to.
Okay. And so some of those other key issues you're talking about, what objectives do you want to get to pursue those?
Well, I want to be able to tackle those things that will ensure that the water comes out, right? Our wastewater systems are actually pretty well set. They've done a good job of maintenance. They're a little bit newer, but then we need to. The things I want to do is to ensure that aging infrastructure, which runs all the way from the top to the end. So I live in Diamond Springs, and there's some galvanized steel pipe that feeds the water to my house in the streets. It pops once a year or so.
Oh.
Okay? And we want to minimize that. So that means an active maintenance program. Again, too many things were deferred, and doing as much in-house as possible, and to ensure that the work we do is done, under budget or within our budgets. But I think we've all seen, you go to a Home Depot, and equipment costs and construction costs have just skyrocketed.
Oh yeah.
Right, and so in many cases we have no choice but to pay those.
Yeah.
It's true of everyone. And so people say, why are you doing this? But I think it's important. I think it's the best place I can contribute to my community.
Now tell me, what's your opinion on like ag rates versus residential rates? And I feel like that's something that people always talk about in this county.
People always talk about ag rates. So let's go back to the beginning. Right? The El Dorado Irrigation District was started to provide water to agriculture. And in the beginning, they were ditches, hewn out of the ground, bringing things down in canals and flumes, and it is what this county is based on. And I think it is important to have a strong agriculture, right? And also, and basically to jump to your point, I believe in the ag rate. Okay, I believe that is an appropriate thing for our community. Partially because I want to keep our country, I want to keep agriculture alive and vibrant and not make it cost prohibitive. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, in my opinion, I think we draw a lot of tourism up here too, because people come for the agriculture.
Right, and just to kind of, as I mentioned, you have Reservoir 1 and Reservoir A. Well, those are basically placed above where most of the agriculture occurs in this county. Ag does not need treated water. And so as they were developing the systems, they essentially went to the ag community way before my time and your time, right? And they went, look, it's more efficient for everybody to provide treated water here, even though you don't need it. And I believe that is one of the reasons the ag rate originated. But ag pays good money too. They use a lot more water. Remember, you're charged by how much you use. There are different rates based on your usage. And again, I want to keep the rural nature of this county. I want to keep agriculture strong.
Right on. Sounds great to me. Now, so being part of a board, you're going to have people that you're not always going to agree with. How do you feel like you work with people, if you don't agree with them?
Well, again, I've been on many boards. Fire Safe Council. I was on the Snowline Hospice Board for 7 years, 2 terms as president. And then I've been on many contentious boards. The only ones that I listed that I gave you are only the ones are relevant to here. I'm on a number of national and other things. And you know what? Sometimes we disagree. As you can tell, I think I'm a fairly personable kind of person, and I'm able to come to solutions. My feeling is if you have a number of parties that may diverge in in different things. If you want to come to a solution, you can come to a solution. And I dare say that my experience in history has proven that more times than not, we've come to a good solution.
Great. So yeah, sounds like you have a pretty good track record with that.
Mm-hmm.
So now tell us why, what sets you apart as a candidate? Why should voters vote for you?
Well, I think as you can tell, I've done my homework. Anyone who's crazy enough to sit in board meetings for 15 years, so that it means I can hit the ground running. I've observed, I've taken tours of the facility, and I believe I can get along with that, whichever board we have here. And I think we have a fairly strong board now. And I hope that the incoming board would include myself and some other people that want to work together, that want to see a system that is going to be functioning and vibrant and robust for the next 50 years.
Awesome. I think that's a pretty good place to leave the voters with that message right there. Now tell everyone at home, how can they get involved in your campaign if they want to? And then also when and where can they vote for you?
Well, I'm not going to say like they do in Chicago, vote early and vote often, but voting early is okay. Right? So this is my campaign. You'll notice that my tagline, and I've thought about this for quite a long time, is safe and reliable, affordable and sustainable. Safe and reliable being the things that are the most important. November 5th is the election day, the general election. And if you're interested, and we'd love to have you work with us and volunteer and help us out, you can go to penn4eid.com. That's PENN, the number 4, EID.com. And from there, you can go to my contribution page. You can go to an endorsement page. I've got a really cool video, too, that's on that page. And just grab me on the streets. My email for this campaign is, I know you're surprised, penn4eid@gmail.com.
Right on.
Okay, Daniel, anything else?
That's it. Thank you for coming on, Paul. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Catch us for more candidates on here coming up. You can find us on YouTube, all the social medias, and we'll see you guys next time.